Ambassador Edward Peck, welcome to FSRN.
I'm honored.
First, let's begin with where were you on the flotilla and what did you see?
I was on a small ship that came from Athens, Greece. The Svendoni translation is slingshot, really. There were 54 people on board from Bulgaria, from the Czech Republic, from Sweden, from France, from Italy, from Greece, from the United States. And our little boat was small enough so that when the commandos came at 4 o'clock in the morning, let's refer to them as pirates, since that seems to be the phrase that's in good use. The armed and masked pirates just stepped from the deck of their boat onto the deck of our boat. That was it, essentially, as far as taking it over. But there was a major scuffle up around the wheelhouse where the people who were up there, one deck above where I was sitting, tried to offer passive resistance, where you lock arms and try to keep them out of the wheelhouse. And the Israeli soldiers used rifle butts and stun grenade and arm twisting and neck twisting to get them out of there. So we had a number of people injured, none of them critically, but a couple of them rather severely. When the ship finally docked in Ashdod, the first people off were the wounded from our ship, and there were head bandages and arms in slings and a guy on crutches coming down the gangway, because that's what happened to them as they took over this ship in international waters against all the laws that I know about.
You used the term pirates to describe the commanders that came on board. How come?
Well, if this had happened off the coast of Somalia, it would be referred to as piracy, because we were taken in international waters. And the Israelis, of course, claimed, well, they were going to do something bad. Well, the Israelis are well known for launching what are called preemptive strikes, and this was one of them, I guess. But, if it strikes me as odd, sir, speaking to Free Speech Radio as it is, that everybody talks about how the passengers on the big ship, the big Turkish ship, attacked the commandos. And I find that a serious violation of the use of the English language. They were defending the ship against attackers. Here were, 600 men and women who did not want these individuals to be allowed to take over the ship by force and did not wish to go to Israel, where the commandos were sure to take them if they won. So they resisted it. And that's called defense. It's not an attack. The people who were attacking were the guys who came up the sides and down from the helicopters, armed and masked. They wore balaclava masks the whole time they were on our ship, and I assume the same thing was there.
Now, as far as you know, was there any offer to take these supplies from the ships and from Israeli officials and to deliver them themselves to avoid this conflict? Was there any negotiation like that took place?
Well, not involving me. You may know, you should know, I think, sir, that this was a European effort, and at the last minute, literally, they invited the Free Palestine movement to send some people, and they contacted me, and the first time we'd ever had contact, and I went with them. But yes, but see, the reason that this convoy was taking place was because the Israelis are not letting in that kind of thing to Gaza. So to have them say, yes, you give it to us and we'll take it there, the immediate response is, oh, sure. Because that's what the whole effort was for. There's this embargo punishing an entire 1.5 million people, because the Israelis can do it.
As a former ambassador, as someone deeply involved in diplomatic relations over the years, why did you see it as so important to participate in this action with regards to the embargo in Gaza?
Well, that's a good question, and I thought about it a bit. When they called and offered this, I think it was 5 days' notice, and I have things to do and get stuff on the schedule. And I thought that all these years that I've been involved, I've been involved with talking to people, listening to people, taking groups of Americans over to the Middle East, to Syria and Jordan and Lebanon, the West Bank and Israel and Egypt, to talk and to listen and all of that. And I figured, let me contribute to something a little more tangible. Let me do something that would hopefully, if the Israelis handled it knowledgeably, would help to ease both the pressure on the people of Gaza and on the state of Israel. No one in his or her right mind, and I recognize that there aren't people who do not qualify for inclusion, wants a bad thing to happen to anybody in the Middle East, not to one Israeli or one Palestinian, and in my own case, not to one American. But terrible things have happened to all three groups in the past, are happening now, and are going to happen in the future if Israel continues on her present policies. And this is what distresses me. Here's a chance for you to do something that will not cost you a great deal. In fact, it'll save you some money. Let this go forward. Doesn't harm a thing, and you're going to come out way ahead of where you are now.
It's been a few days now since you returned back to the States. What have you heard about other people who you were with on the ship?
Some of them have sort of disappeared. There's an American citizen by the name of Khalid Tourani who, according to the messages coming out, has went into detention and has not been seen or heard of since. And he was a man that I got to know, a very interesting fellow. And other people, like Paul LaRudy was apparently savagely beaten on the dock because he refused to sign some papers written in Hebrew because he didn't know what they said. The whole thing is kind of Kafkaesque. When I was marched off the ship, I was taken into the processing tents, and they did all kinds of photographs and records, and I had a health examination and everything. And they took me and they said, "You're going to be deported." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "Because you broke an Israeli law." I'm speaking to the gentleman in his excellent English. Mm-hmm. I said, "Which Israeli law did I break?" He said, "You entered Israel illegally." And I said, "No, wait. The ship I was on was captured in international waters, and I was brought here essentially at gunpoint and forced ashore, and you call that violating an Israeli law?" I said, this is a dream sequence. You forced me to come here. I didn't violate your law. But this is what I was charged with and why I was deported, leaving everything on the ship. None of us was allowed to take anything off our ship except our passports and the clothes we were wearing.
And that conversation took place once they had brought you to Israeli territory, to shore.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You illegally entered the country. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm glad you noticed that. So when they tell us that everybody on that big boat was an Israel-hating terrorist and al-Qaeda sympathizer, I say to the people that I speak to in other media, well, what did you expect them to call us? Tree-hugging pacifists? Of course we're all savage murderers. In that kind of an engagement, you say, well, all the commandos can only get into units if they're convicted rapists or child molesters. That's called smearing the opposition. American politicians know about that. But, were there some people on the ship who are anti-Israeli? I wouldn't be surprised. But to tar the whole group like that, you see, because there were people from many different countries on that ship, lots of different countries. And they all share this one belief that what's happening in Gaza is inhumane and a violation of international law. And, in fact, it violates it fits the U.S. legal definition of international terrorism. Efforts to coerce or intimidate a civilian population in the U.S. Code is described as international terrorism by our law.
Well, following from that, actually, Ambassador Peck, I know we have to let you go, so I just have one more question.
Please, sir. I'm sorry. I keep babbling.
Sure, no. Other witnesses on the ships have said that Israeli commandos confiscated all types of video or audio or media devices. Now, from what you've seen since you've been back in the U.S. of media coverage of this, what is missing? And also, I would ask, from your previous comment there, what needs to happen next to investigate or to look at this incident to find out the facts?
The Israelis confiscated everything, as I say, from my electric razor to my cell phone to my underwear. I was allowed, when they got on the ship, that was it. They took everything. They even took a little pen light that I have in my, to light my way on that dark ship at night, because the rest of the bathroom didn't have a light in it. So they took everything. So all of the journalists who were on board, and there were lots of them, have lost any ability to communicate. They got off a couple of final shots on the ship through the satellite, but after that, total darkness, and the Israelis were in charge of everything. Your second part of the question, what's supposed to happen now? Well, sir, that depends entirely on Israel. As a sovereign nation, Israel is free to do whatever it wishes and avoid doing anything it doesn't want to do, and then be prepared to deal with the consequences of action or inaction or whatever. Mr. Netanyahu, who is not exactly a fuzzy puppy personality, has said, as far as the commission is concerned, the investigation, forget it. There's also a ship named the Rachel Corrie. Are you familiar with that name?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Supposedly still going to try to get there, and Mr. Netanyahu says we'll use whatever force is necessary, including more force than we used the last time. Oh, okay. That's not the kind of welcome I would look forward to. And I heard somewhere that the Turks said that they were going to protect that ship. Wait a minute now. That becomes dangerous. I believe there are many ways that Israel could live in peace and security among her neighbors, which is something that we all want. Everybody wants that. We just have different ideas of how to get there, but only if all her neighbors are living in peace and security. I mean, that's the only way to get where everybody wants to get. They all have to be in peace and security. And I would hope, without much hope, that Israel will say, okay, let's see if we cannot do a better job of advancing our interests on a broad range rather than destroying them on a narrow range, which could be extremely costly in the future, and I hope not.
Edward Peck was Chief of Mission in Iraq and Deputy Director of the White House Task Force on Terrorism in the Reagan administration. Ambassador Peck, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your patience, my friend.